Everybody loved Jennifer. I mean, she was a heart of gold. I still shed tears because I miss her. I miss her smile. I miss her. And she didn't deserve that.
She was laying on a mattress, a plastic bag over her head, and she was nude from the bra down.
Revenge starts with love and passion, but often leads to hate and death.
When someone doesn't talk about how they feel, it begins to bubble up.
He was very, very jealous.
Revenge is when you want to respond to something that hurt you. Payback is when you take action.
It's not the snake that kills the person, it's the venom.
November 15th, 2008. At 5:30 a.m., police in Plant City, Florida, receive a 911 call from a terrified woman.
I'm in the closet. Where are you? I don't know.
She indicated that she was in the trunk of her car, that she had been taken against her will, and she was seeking help.
They tried to find out any information that would give them a lead on her whereabouts, but they couldn't. There was a lot of noise, there was a lot of music. You could barely hear the voices.
They got all the music loud so I can't talk.
At this point, the dispatcher doesn't know who she is or where she is. The woman is screaming. This is potentially a life and death situation.
But before dispatchers can get the woman's name, the line suddenly goes dead.
She was worried that whoever had taken her was going to find out what she was doing and do her harm. So she discontinued the call after about 1 minute and 23 seconds. They were trying to decide whether they should call her back, because the one side is that if you call her back, you might get more information to be able to help her. The other side is they might hear her, whoever had her, and they might do harm to her. So on balance, they said we shouldn't call her back.
Instead, operators attempt to trace the call.
The 911 call pinged off the tower that was located at the Nonasassos Road and Interstate 4, and that's why it was received by the Plant City operators. You wouldn't be able to tell a law enforcement officer what to look for. And the likelihood was that if they were driving through Plant City, they wouldn't be hanging around a cell phone tower.
Police can only hope the woman calls back. But as several hours pass, they begin to fear the worst. 20 miles away in Tampa, Florida, the family of 31-year-old Jennifer Johnson is having similar thoughts. They've all gathered for her daughter's birthday party, but Jennifer is nowhere to be found. The last time any of them saw her was over 18 hours ago.
There is absolutely no way Jennifer would miss her 2-year-old daughter's birthday party. She's been planning for it, she's been saving for it, she's coordinating everything with all the aunts.
Everybody calling, Jennifer's not picking up this phone. Jennifer's not picking up this phone. And we were sitting there and I was like, this not right. Y'all know this is not Jennifer. That was her only daughter. And she would do anything for her baby.
Jennifer Johnson was born on May 12, 1977, in Santa Ana, California. The oldest of 3 sisters raised in a large, tight-knit family.
Jennifer was headstrong, independent, didn't ask nobody for nothing. She was raised by her mother, but she was also raised by my mother.
Jennifer was only 7 when the family relocated, so she did most of her growing up in Marianna, Florida.
from a little girl. She always loved to braid. I mean, that was a gift that God gave her. She know I love hairdos. And she would make deals with me. Auntie, if you do this for me, I'll do your hair. So she did everybody's hair. Everybody go to Jennifer.
Hairdressing turned out to be more than just a childhood hobby. After high school, Jennifer took a job in Tampa so she could save enough money to open her own salon.
Jennifer Johnson was a very, very eager, outgoing, outspoken, independent, hard-working young woman who had a very bright future. She worked at a medical device company, and she sold over $250,000 a year at that company, making her one of the best employees there. Everyone who worked with her or worked around her recognized her enthusiasm and her drive.
But Jennifer wanted more than just a career. She also wanted a family of her own. In 2001, that led her into the arms of a single father named Vincent Brown.
Jennifer met Vince in a bar, and from there I took off. We started seeing less and less of her. We wondering what is going on.
Jennifer's family struggled to understand the appeal. Vincent was 9 years older and an ex-con who recently served 18 months in prison. But he seemed to go out of his way to prove them wrong.
Their relationship was like a whirlwind. He took care of her. He didn't want her to want for anything. It was almost like a dream come true.
It seemed even more like a fairy tale when Jennifer found out she was pregnant.
This was a big deal for our family because she was the last to have a baby. And we always say, all right, Jennifer, it's your time. You're gonna have a baby. And she had a miscarriage. So she went to the doctor and they say she'll never be able to have children.
It was a major blow, which caused Jennifer to take a closer look at her relationship with Vincent. And soon, cracks began to appear.
She had to come to the realization that he had 9 other baby mamas, and his attention wasn't always just on Jennifer.
You will go into the relationship, everything is great, everything's fine, and then they may just slam the door the first time, and then they walk out, and now you have an argument, and they come back, baby, I'm sorry. Then they come back, and it's like every time it becomes this cycle more and more.
The two broke up and got back together several times. Then in 2006, everything changed.
They had been together about 5 or 6 years, and then she got pregnant. Everybody was happy, and she was the miracle baby.
After 2 years, it seemed like Jennifer and Vincent might work things out. The night before their daughter's birthday, they even met up at a club.
So she can't wait to hurry up and get dressed. She spent around and asked everybody how she looked. We started saying, where you going? You cooking, where you going?
Jennifer told her family she was meeting Vincent at a nightclub, but she never returned.
So now it's day. She done cooked all this food. All this food is on the counter. We all walking around. I done grabbed me a drink now because something ain't right. My nerves done got bad. We thinking she gonna walk through the door, and she never did.
Now, the family is convinced something has happened. And the one person who might know where Jennifer is seems to be missing as well.
Neither Jennifer or Vincent are at the birthday party.
We started calling, and it got to the voicemail. That person was saying, this person at this number is not available.
But by nightfall, Vincent has recorded a new message.
Then it changed to, I did what I had to do. It's done. I think it was my niece, and they was like, y'all hear what he's saying? Y'all hear what he's saying? And then when they said, I said, cause he done killed her.
"31-year-old Jennifer Johnson has disappeared after a night out with the father of her child, Vincent Brown. And after her family hears his disturbing voicemail message, they immediately call police. According to them, there have been red flags from the beginning of the relationship.
Vincent Brown had 9 baby mamas, and it was always, you got to compete against all these baby mamas. I said, girl, leave that. I feel she knew she deserved better, but she got caught up. She fell in love. She want us to like him, you know, but then the bad things that he started doing, then that made me like push away from him.
The family's biggest concern was Vincent's alleged drinking and the violence that sometimes came with it.
He could be sometime the good person, and then he'll turn into an evil person and do evil things. And then I start hearing the rumors of his other baby mama, how he used to beat her. I asked Jennifer about it, and she was like, Auntie, I got it. She stopped telling us anything. So we on the outside trying to look in.
Victims of intimate partner violence often overlook the red flags. I mean, they're blinded by love. This person who abuses them doesn't start off by just abusing them. It happens slowly. They first start off by charming them, by making them feel like they're beautiful, that they're loved, like they're the only one. And then slowly, those actions get more harmful.
Strange things just started happening to her. A fire started behind the door, set her whole house on fire. She didn't catch it in time. Then there was another incident. Jennifer always wore a lot of jewelry, and I don't know how they got into her house. All I know, they broke into her house and they robbed her.
Some of Jennifer's family believe Vincent was the one responsible.
So they the only 2 in the house. She's not gonna set fire to her house. Everybody kept saying Vincent's setting this up because it's too much stuff back to back.
Jennifer did try to leave Vincent on several occasions, but each time he did whatever it took to change her mind.
He gave her this miracle baby that meant the world to her. That does make it hard for anybody to walk away. Why would I break up my family when the one thing I wanted was a family?
By 2008, Jennifer's loved ones were worried how far Vincent might go.
She was very independent. She had her own car, her own house, and I believe he got mad about that. He started envying her. His love started turning into hate because he seen what type of woman she was. She didn't need him.
That family had to watch this very gregarious woman go from being outgoing and independent to being isolated and very private. That was very awkward for that family to experience because they even had to go through 3 years of multiple police reports and arrests of Vincent abusing Jennifer.
Now they believe Vincent followed through on his threats.
Jennifer is not gonna miss her baby birthday party. She's the hostess out. I mean, we're gonna give a party and she's not here? Come on now, y'all know that girl love her baby too much for that.
Plant City police aren't as certain. Since it's been less than 24 hours, they advise waiting to file a report. So, Jennifer's family decide to take matters into their own hands.
We just jumped in our cars. We went looking everywhere we thought she would be. We was in the river, we was in the tunnels, we was in the lake, we was under the rug. The police were saying this family is real forceful, and they had to back us up, telling us to let them do their job. So now here's the kicker. We goes to his mama house, and when we get there, we looking down on the ground, and you can see where it been like a scuffle. You know, if you dance around in it, your footprints, everything. So the dirt had been disturbed.
The family immediately calls police again. And this time, they sent someone.
And when the police came, he went to walking around. He picked up a bracelet. He picked up earrings. ring, ankle bracelets. And he put it all on top of his notepad. And we say, this is Jennifer's jewelry.
Vincent's mother admits she saw Jennifer the night before, arguing with her son in the driveway. But when the family asks to search the house, she threatens to charge them all with trespassing.
Once they told us that we was trespassing, we left, but we did come back. We couldn't come to the fence, but we circled the block.
Along the side of the house, hidden from view, they claimed to spot something strange. A vehicle completely covered by a tarp.
That was her car, and we didn't know.
And action.
Fundamentally are connected.
She is so driven and has always been that way.
I'm a follower.
Beauty isn't just what...
Florida police might not have enough evidence to prove Vincent Brown abducted Jennifer Johnson, but her family has little doubt, especially when they notice a vehicle stashed behind his mother's house.
It covered all the way down. You didn't see nothing because they have junk. Our mind not thinking, okay, she's over here. We just trying to find her. Is she in this house?
Without a search warrant, all they can do is wait. After several hours, the family goes home to rest. But when they return bright and early the next morning, something is missing.
When we go back, one of my nieces say, man, we should have checked that tarp, but it's gone. The tarp on the ground now, but the vehicle is gone.
The number one suspect was Vincent. We saw that they got in an argument, and he was the last person seen with her.
On Sunday, November 17th, 2 days after Jennifer's disappearance, Vincent surprises everyone by turning himself in on an unrelated crime.
He know we was looking for him, because he was going to be missing too. But his family made him turn himself in on a drug charge. So when they find her, they can't say he did it because he was in jail. No, baby, we were smarter than that.
Vincent refuses to say anything about Jennifer. But later that day, her car is found abandoned in a nearby neighborhood. When a forensics team searches it for evidence, they find one of Jennifer's earrings in the trunk. The family redoubles their efforts to find her, holding out hope that she might still be alive.
We have been looking all that Monday. It was light turning dark. We got a call and it was somebody say they found her.
The call comes from 30 miles away in Lakeland, Florida, from homicide detective Jeff Birdwell.
Around 6 o'clock, 10 till 6, I got a phone call that a female had been found in an abandoned house. The time between me getting the call and the time that our group actually entered the house had been about 4 hours. So it's dark. Immediately I start looking for any obvious signs as to what may have happened. It looked like there were tire impressions in the side yard. The gate, the wooden privacy gate, was left open. I noticed that what looked to me like possible drag marks in the grass. As we go into the door, there was a mattress propped up. There was some furniture along the wall. It's somewhat of a disarray.
And lying on one of the mattresses is the body of a dead woman.
She appeared to have a plastic bag over her head. She had her blouse pushed up, exposing a black bra, and she was nude from the bra down. When you see something like that, it forms an opinion that it's not just suspicious circumstances, but it's also going to be a homicide. It was apparent, based on experience, that she likely died of asphyxiation. There was some markings around her neck that looked like finger or fingernail marks. which would have been associated with the plastic bag being put on. If she was conscious and struggling, she might have clawed at her own neck.
It doesn't take long to make an identification.
Our PIO was on scene, and speaking with the media, his name was Jack Gillen. Jack walked over to me and said, "Jeff, they're wanting to know if it's possible that this could be the missing lady in Tampa." I contacted the Tampa Police Department and spoke to Detective Houston, who was the lead of the missing persons report. I asked him to get me a description and to find out any tattoos that the family knew of.
They discovered because of the tattoo Jennifer had on her arm of her daughter, that it was actually Jennifer Johnson who was dead in the house.
As soon as Jennifer's family gets the news, they immediately drive to Lakeland.
We all loaded up and we got there. Everybody's crying. They didn't let us actually see her when they brought her out because they had her covered. And we was all there. When the coroner came and got her body, it was that morning, and I went outside and I looked up to the sky and tears was running down my face, and I just asked God, why? Why?
Based on the tire tracks and drag marks, detectives are fairly certain Jennifer was killed somewhere else. They hope an autopsy will reveal further clues.
To a layperson, an autopsy may be unsightly or unnerving, but the human body, once it's deceased, continues to communicate. It continues to tell you what happened to it.
However, before the medical examiner even gets started, he finds a crucial piece of evidence.
All her remaining clothing is removed, which revealed the cell phone that was hidden in her bra.
People who come to Cricket stay with Cricket.
My family loves going foraging by our farm. And with Cricket, we can mark our locations, post photos, even identify mushrooms.
Don't have to look far for a good deal. Smile, you're on Cricket.
I can see it. You were sick.
21-year-old Jennifer Johnson is a crucial step toward catching her killer. But for her family, it's heartbreaking.
She had dry tears coming down her eyes. And I just took the sheets and I just took them off of her because I wanted to see, what did you do to my niece? Why did you do this to her? She did not deserve this. I noticed he had broke her wrist. He had broke her speech box. That's why nobody heard no scream. She was tortured. And like the coroner said, she was seeing everything that was did to her. She died slow.
The plastic bag used to suffocate Jennifer is from the store where she purchased supplies for her daughter's birthday.
You put the bag over her face, then you put another garbage bag over her face, and pulled until you broke her neck.
Worse still, there's evidence the killer sexually assaulted Jennifer after she was dead.
That's why I know he was an evil person, because how dare you have sex with someone's dead that's not responding back to you? How can you do that? It hurts. It hurts this day. It hurts when I talk about it. It hurts because it sent me in a dark place.
When investigators search Jennifer's phone, they discover she tried to call 911 twice in the hours leading up to her death.
The first time, it wasn't successful. The second time, it went into the emergency department at the Plant City Police Department, and she told them that she was in the trunk of a car.
Jennifer's voice is hard to make out over the loud music, but one section of the call is clear, and it raises more questions than it answers.
I'm in the trunk. Where are you? I don't know. that's why I can't talk.
Until now, the evidence seems to point to only one killer, Vincent Brown. But Jennifer said they. Did he have help? Or is it possible he might be innocent?
In all law enforcement, but never more than from an investigator's standpoint, you approach everything like a parachute. It works better when it's open. So we're open-minded. We don't try to formulate the cause and the effect before we know the external circumstances.
The only things investigators know for sure is that Jennifer went to a Tampa club that night and called 911 from the trunk of her car hours later.
That was the last of any communication from her. So an assumption would be that the final attack on her probably occurred at that time. From there, she was taken down I-4, back eastbound towards Lakeland. It's unknown to us through our investigation if the suspect in this case, her estranged boyfriend, Mr. Brown, if he knew people in that general area.
However, there's no evidence Jennifer had ever been there with Vincent. So detectives go back to the nightclub in Tampa instead to retrace their steps. Employees remember seeing Jennifer late Friday night, having fun with friends.
They were saying she was spinning around. She had the biggest smile.
But when Vincent arrived, Jennifer actually didn't seem happy to see him. Witnesses say they got into an argument over their daughter's birthday party.
I think he promised her, I'm gonna give her $100 for the baby, but she told him, I don't need your $100 and I don't want you there. And he said, don't F around.
It quickly became clear Jennifer didn't go there to reconcile with Vincent, but to break up with him. This time, for good.
She had his stuff in the car to drop off because I feel she had done had enough. I feel that he knew it.
The timeline suggests they went back to Vincent's mother's house. But what happened next is still a mystery.
We know that Jennifer left the club arguing with Vincent, but this is when the water gets really murky because later after meeting at his mother's house, she leaves and finds herself locked in the trunk of a car and being kidnapped.
During my time in law enforcement, you didn't walk in and work homicide. That was unheard of. That is the top tier of investigations. It is the worst crime in humanity to take a life. Therefore, it is the most responsible and accountable task to undertake. When you watch TV, it's all over in 40 minutes plus commercials, and in real life, sometimes it's decades. But the key to a homicide is it's never closed, ever, until an arrest and conviction. This is someone's daughter, this is someone's mother, this is someone's sister, brother, and you want to bring some form of justice, not just to this individual, but also to all her family.
When you're hurt, the bills...
A violent ex-boyfriend, a terrifying abduction, and a mysterious accomplice. For Florida police, it all adds up to a murder plot. But they still don't have enough evidence to connect Vincent Brown to the death of Jennifer Johnson. At this point, investigators have stopped looking into a second suspect and are focusing solely on Vincent. And they soon receive unexpected help from one of Vincent's friends, nicknamed Dog.
They've been friends ever since they were little kids. And he said he loved Jennifer. She didn't deserve that.
Dog tells investigators Vincent showed up at his house the morning Jennifer had been killed. And one thing immediately stood out as strange. He was driving Jennifer's car.
He knew something was wrong because you driving Jennifer's car. Jennifer's not gonna give you her car. And Vincent, he don't smoke Newports. Jennifer smoked Newports. He got Newports in his hand. Dog's wife asked, "Where's Jennifer?" And he said, "Thumbs down." That bitch up under the bridge dead. That's what he said.
Dog says he and his wife didn't know if Vincent was joking or not. But he needed a place to stay that night, and they let him. The next morning, they found out it was true.
His wife heard it all on the news, and she got up and she told her husband, "Get him out of our house."
A few weeks later, Vincent's current cellmate also calls investigators to inform them Vincent has been bragging about the murder. According to him, Vincent said he did it because he couldn't stand losing Jennifer to another man.
When Jennifer was ready to move on, that's exactly what she did. She started to date. Look, she's a beautiful woman and doing very well at her job. But guess what? Vincent wasn't having that.
Vincent stated, "If I can't have her, no one can have her."
He knew how good she was. Even though Jennifer had all of it before him, because she shared it with him and walked away, the time that they built together, he thought that he owned it.
His ego didn't allow proper decision-making as an adult.
Between the two witness statements, detectives think they can paint a clear picture of what happened that night.
On November 15th, 2008, Jennifer Johnson was at a bar in Tampa. She had a boyfriend that was very, very jealous, and he came to the bar, found her.
After arguing and leaving the nightclub, Vincent did convince Jennifer to go to his parents' house to talk. The talking at the parents' house then led to a very heated argument. Now, this is 3 o'clock in the morning. This argument was so ugly that Jennifer decided to leave. But she wasn't able to get far because he followed her and they started to scuffle in the driveway.
He put her into the trunk of her own car and drove away. He went through the city of Plant City, where she attempted to make a 911 call. He then drove her to an abandoned house in Lakeland, Florida. Put 2 bags over her head and killed her.
Investigators now believe they have enough to press charges against Vincent. In January 2009, he's indicted on counts of kidnapping and first-degree murder.
Everybody took him for granted. Nobody thought he had that in him. And he's an evil person. He don't never ever need to get on this side of the earth again because he's gonna do it to someone else.
After a 2-month investigation, Plant City police have linked Vincent Brown to the murder of his ex-girlfriend, Jennifer Johnson. In 2010, as prosecutors continue to ready their case for trial, the family decides to take action.
The city of Plant City got sued by Ms. Johnson's family, and they alleged that the city failed to protect Ms. Johnson by what the 911 operators did and what they didn't do. Part of our investigation was to listen to that audio tape over and over and over. We went and talked to the 911 operator, who was a very young woman who had a very good record. And basically she told us that she couldn't understand Ms. Johnson because it was so loud. The 911 operator was devastated by this. She thought about that for a long, long time. Obviously, it turned out very poorly. But the question is, was there anything that Plant City did that could have changed the outcome? And ultimately, our investigation indicated probably not.
The following year, in October 2011, Vincent's murder trial finally begins.
I just cannot imagine a more tragic case, a more terrifying case. Think about the fact that Ms. Johnson was thrown into the trunk of her own car and that she was driven from Tampa to Plant City to Lakeland. And that's not a short drive. That's 40 minutes of terror. And the only shot she had was that she would be able to call and get help, and that just didn't work. To be taken to an abandoned house and murdered, asphyxiated by the man who's the father of your child. Utterly horrific.
It was like his family on one side, our family on one side, and we very angry. So the court had to sometime cut court because we was at each other in the courtroom until the judge put the law down. Y'all, somebody gonna go to jail, da-da-da, let's continue court. So we had to sit there and act like people, you know what I'm saying?
Because the case is built mostly on circumstantial evidence, prosecutors focus on Vincent's state of mind and his history of domestic violence.
Normally, an abuser does not abuse their victim because their victim did something. An abuser normally victimizes their victim because the victim triggered something in them that is unhealed. Jennifer, being this amazing leader in the cosmetology realm, being able to look at somebody and build them up, being able to bring her family together and be the glue for her family, you are now a direct mirror of what I hate about myself. So what I am punching is not you, I'm punching me.
Jennifer was a loving parent who really wanted Vincent to be a part of her and her child's life. And as a result of that, she sacrificed her emotional well-being, her physical well-being, and her life.
But the defense is quick to point out that Jennifer's 911 call never identifies Vincent as her abductor. According to them, his only crime is the drug charge, which already sent him to jail. Vincent even takes the stand to tell the jury his side of the story.
I really wasn't trying to hear what he had to say because he had done broke our heart. My anger is how can I get through these doors to get to him? Only thing I remember that he smiled. He smiled at us. Like he said on his voicemail, it's done. He did what he had to do. He had to do what he had to do. And he did it.
In the end, the jury sides with the prosecution.
On November the 16th, 2011, Vincent Brown was convicted on all charges. Despite the possibility of a death sentence, the jury spared him, but they did give him life.
I wanted the electric chair. But then when I thought about it, these 2 life terms, we ain't got to worry about him ever getting out. And now he can think long and hard. He's a monster, and he need to be just where he at.
They said it's not the snake that kills the person, it's the venom. So when someone doesn't talk about how certain things have impacted them or how they feel, it begins to bubble up, and then you create different stories and plans of revenge.
This was a very tragic story. It's an intersection between domestic violence and a love affair. Domestic violence, 80% of the time, leads to death. And that's exactly what happened with Vincent Brown and Jennifer Johnson.
We should have did more.
Every time Johntay got into anything, Two-Face, Pepe, call my mama, I wasn't there. And that's like my biggest regret, that I wasn't there for him.
He saw the vehicle pull up. He instantly hears gunfire. Just shooting.
When you're in a relationship that is hostile and volatile and unpredictable and unsafe, you do reach a breaking point.
People do act different ways. People may be frightened, people may be angry.
It's not about love anymore. It's about property, what's mine.
17 shell casings tell a story within itself, right? It says someone wanted someone dead.
August 27, 2017. Around 1:30 a.m., police in Detroit, Michigan respond to the scene of a terrifying car accident.
A 911 call was placed because a vehicle had crashed into a church. One of the walls in the parking lot, a vehicle had driven through the wall of the parking lot, and they believe they saw a person inside the vehicle.
Responders get to the scene, and they notice a 20-something-year-old man slumped over, barely breathing.
At those hours, it's typically pretty quiet. The person was driving eastbound on Mack Avenue. It looks like they lost control around this location. You can see the tires in the grass. He went through a 3-foot high brick wall, and then his vehicle came to a rest in a parking lot.
Upon closer inspection, officers spot evidence of a reason for the crash.
They notice bullet holes on the driver's side of the vehicle, as well as blood dripping from the man's body.
EMS now arrives and discovers that the person is shot. There's a chest wound. Now it's turning into a different investigation.
First responders are able to identify him as 29-year-old Johntay Brooks. They jump into action, and they rush him to the hospital because they try to save this man's life.
Johntay Maurice Lewis Brooks was born in 1988. His mother, Teresa Brooks, had him when she was little more than a child herself.
Johntay is my firstborn. I was really happy when he first got home, and my mom took care of him because I was just 17. So she took care of us together, you know.
Johntay grew up in a loving, close-knit family. He had 3 brothers, 1 sister. Unfortunately, Jontae's father was not in the picture, so he took it upon himself at a very early age to be the man. Not having a father in his life, Jontae took the role of being a father very seriously, so he was a very active dad.
Although they never married, the couple went on to have 4 more children together, and Jontae worked hard to support them.
Jontae eventually figured out that he thrived working with his hands and landed a career in landscaping. He took a lot of pride in his work and creating beautiful landscapes for all of his clients.
In the fall of 2016, Jontae decided to take another chance on love with 26-year-old Minyetta Yeager.
Minyetta actually pursued Jontae, and he found this really appealing because she would take the initiative. And so she would take him out on dates, pick him up for dates, pay for things, and this was unfamiliar to someone who had to provide for everyone in his life. They had a really happy relationship, always spending time together, going on dates, and just really excited about the future.
He actually thinks that she may potentially be the one. But as in oftentimes in cases like this, you know, there's a hiccup along the way, and the relationship begins to fade, and it falls apart.
By 2017, Jontae had simplified his life, focusing on spending time with his children. But now, he's clinging to life. Detroit police have determined Jontae lost consciousness and crashed into a church after someone shot him. The question is who?
There's no guns in the car, there's no passenger in the vehicle, so obviously somebody from outside the vehicle fired into the car. We try to figure out, one is motive. Was this person an intentional target? Was it an accident?
Witnesses tell police a truck was pursuing Jontae shortly before he crashed.
Several witnesses noticed the white minivan seemed to be trying to get away from the red pickup truck. However, once the white minivan crashed into the church, the red pickup truck fled the scene. They were not able to see the license plate. However, they did notice there were 2 people in the vehicle, a man and a woman.
Unfortunately, none of them saw the shooting.
Officers surveyed the scene and noticed there are no shell casings at the church. They realized the shooting must have occurred somewhere else.
We would call that a 2-part scene. The secondary crime scene would have been where he was found. The original crime scene would be where he was shot.
One theory was that this was possibly a road rage incident, because that's what normally happens if you see one vehicle chasing another down the road.
In that specific area, we haven't responded to too many homicides. There is a little bit of prostitution over there. There's some breaking and entering of automobiles and stolen cars and things of that nature. Now, the investigative wheels are spinning to where this could have happened at.
As officers are surveying the scene, they notice down the street at the gas station, there are multiple cars and blue flashing lights. And they wonder, is this part of the current scene?
Hours of August 17th, 2017. Into the shooting of 29-year-old Jonte Brooks. Before they've even finished interviewing witnesses, they receive some tragic news.
Unfortunately, the paramedics were not able to save his life, and he does die at the hospital. He was killed from a single bullet that went through his right shoulder and went through his lungs.
So now you have a murder investigation. And now, where was he murdered?
Flashing lights from patrol cars at a gas station nearby tip off officers to the possible location.
Coincidentally, there's a crime scene just down the street. Second call that had come in for shots fired at the gas station. Officers at the scene were quickly able to determine that the two incidents were connected.
When investigators arrive, they find evidence of a relentless attack. 17 spent shell casings scattered on the ground.
Officers notice all 17 shell casings are the same, so they seemingly come from the same weapon, meaning there's probably just one shooter. After Jonte was shot, he tried to get away. Unfortunately, he succumbed to his injuries, swerved and drove right into the church and crashed.
You have a two-part scene, so we would have to break those two up and then have evidence techs or our crime scene services section document each location.
17 shell casings tell a story within itself, right? It says someone wanted someone dead.
Officers talked to the gas station owner, and he says he then noticed a red pickup truck pull up and a white minivan pulled up right next to it. He heard some arguing and heard some gunshots, about 6 or 7 of them.
The owner tells police that when he ran to the window, he caught a glimpse of the shooter.
The gas station owner noticed it was a young black woman shooting at the white minivan. At this point, the white minivan pulled out and sped off. The woman followed, shooting on foot at the white minivan, then jumped back into the red pickup truck and tried to follow him.
Unfortunately, he's unable to provide a description of the driver or the license plate.
People don't look out the window and expect a homicide to happen and say, I'm documenting it step by step by step. I'm looking at my watch. Okay, it's now. They're not doing that. You know, you're busy doing this. All of a sudden you hear something, you look, and you only capture this much.
Luckily, the gas station has security cameras covering the entire area.
What's better than the witness account is the video at the store, which captures the event in its entirety from start to finish.
Officers review the surveillance footage, and they notice an older black man driving the vehicle and a young black woman in the passenger seat. She's on her phone, and she seems very animated as she's talking. At this point, a white minivan pulls up beside them with the window rolled down. They start to argue, and the young lady jumps out of the vehicle and starts shooting at the white minivan.
Based on the video footage, there wasn't any delay, there was no physical contact, there wasn't any of that.
The video provides investigators with enough information to identify the driver.
Not only does the surveillance footage show the shooting happening, it also reveals the license plate of the vehicle. They're able to tell the vehicle belongs to 44-year-old LeBaron Borum. The officers check his DMV photo, and they notice there is a resemblance to the person in the surveillance video. The officers also realize he lives in the neighborhood of the gas station.
From that, we did surveillance and were able to locate the vehicle parked in the driveway. And from there, we were able to locate and eventually interview the owner of that red pickup.
Ultimately, police arrived at LeBaron's door, and they have questions for him.
At this point, he's the one that ultimately gets to decide what role he wants to play in this investigation. In these investigations, typically when you have multiple defendants, whether it's a bank robbery with 4 or 5 defendants or a homicide with 3 or 4 defendants, typically the first person that comes to the table to talk to the prosecutors will get the best outcome.
And he spills it all. It ends up being a very wild night and a wild scene.
Detroit police are questioning 44-year-old LeBaron Borum, one of 2 suspects identified at the scene of Jonte Brooks' murder. According to LeBaron, he was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time.
He says he was strictly trying to be a good Samaritan. He just got caught up in a very bad situation.
LeBaron says it began with an argument between 2 strangers on his front lawn.
LeBaron tells the officers his son ran into the house and told him, "Dad, there's a van that ran up onto our yard." At this point, LeBaron went outside to see what was going on.
What he says is that he notices there's a female and a male, they're arguing, there's some type of altercation going on. Ultimately, he says the male gets into the vehicle, and it appears that he's about to run the female over. She ultimately gets out of the way, and he drives on in this white van.
LeBaron tells the officers he does recognize the lady from the neighborhood. It is 27-year-old Minietta Yeager.
He knew the man arguing with Minietta as well. It was her ex-boyfriend, Jonte Brooks.
What he stated was that he was aware that Miss Yeager and Mr. Brooks were in a tumultuous type of relationship.
By the time LeBaron came to her aid, Jonte had already driven away.
He went to help Miss Yeager, thinking that this was a woman in distress. And she ultimately says, "Hey, yes, can you go after this white van? That's my mother's van. I gotta get it back. I'm concerned my boyfriend just attacked me and he took the van." He had no clue that she had a gun on her. So he ultimately lets Miss Yeager into his vehicle, and they drive off looking for this white minivan.
While they were chasing Jonte, Minietta called police to report the van stolen. Then she called Jonte.
Miss Yeager said her plan was to try to keep Jonte on the phone as long as possible so the police can get to him and he could be arrested.
There's some heated words being said back and forth. Ultimately, he also hears that they agreed to meet up on the east side of Detroit at a gas station in the area of Van Dyke and Warren Avenue. And this would have been around 1 o'clock in the morning on August 27th. When they get to the gas station, there's no Jonte. And so, she instantly calls Jonte on her phone. She argues with him, "Why didn't you show up?" Well, apparently he did show up because he says that he noticed that she was in a vehicle with another man. He's not too happy about that, according to her, and he has choice words. She indicates to LeBaron that he ultimately makes a threat towards her, saying he's gonna kill them.
At this point, LeBaron was reconsidering his decision to get involved, but he ultimately agreed to drive to another gas station.
LeBaron tells the officers Jonte pulled up about a minute later, but then they started arguing because he was highly upset.
He says something to apparently push her buttons. She immediately gets out the vehicle and pulls out a weapon. And she starts to fire into the vehicle that Jonte is in.
Mr. Brooks, without hesitation, just hit the gas and took off. In the course of the shots being fired at the vehicle, Mr. Brooks was shot.
But the harrowing encounter wasn't over yet.
At this point, LeBaron is terrified. He didn't know what just happened. He wanted to just get out of there. However, Ms. Yeager jumped back into the vehicle and told him to just drive.
As Jonte is attempting to get away, he's obviously shot and he's obviously hurt because he then pulls into the lot of a church which is nearby on Mack Avenue and at that point collapses. LeBaron seeing this and Miss Yeager seeing this as they're chasing him, they then decide to pull off and keep going. What LeBaron indicates to the police is that he noticed some lights behind him and, you know, he freaks out.
He saw the police coming and he did not want to be a part of that at all.
He decides to turn down a side street. He ultimately makes his way back home. And strangely enough, he says that Miss Yeager just gets out the vehicle and walks back home. Doesn't say a single word. And from that point, he says he doesn't hear from her ever again. In fact, you know, he doesn't hear anything else until police arrive at his door.
Investigators believe LeBaron is telling the truth. Unfortunately, his actions still make him an accessory to murder.
I don't know if Miss Yeager was intentionally trying to kill Mr. Brooks, but her reckless display of firing a weapon and her disregard for life or anything, the outcome was ultimately homicide. So here we are.
He is ultimately charged as an accessory after the fact. And police charged him because he helped her flee the scene. And then he doesn't immediately go to police.
Hours after the murder of Detroit native Jonte Brooks, investigators are searching for the woman accused of shooting him. Jonte's ex-girlfriend, Minyetta Yeager. They also reach out to Jonte's loved ones to notify them of his death.
Lost it. I lost it.
After recovering from the initial shock, Jonte's family tells police they feared something like this might eventually happen.
What we had learned through the investigation was it was a tumultuous relationship.
So while things started out great in the beginning for Jonte, the transition happened when things got a little more hostile in the relationship. So Miss Yeager started calling him a lot, stalking him, accusing him of being with other women, popping up unannounced at his family's house.
I always heard her in my home, but I never cared to meet her or anything because she was loud, you know. Every time she came to my house, she was always loud. And I just told him that, you know, she can't come over no more because she's very disrespectful. And he said, okay.
When partners start showing that behavior of calling him a lot, accusing him of being with other women, at first we take that as a sign of, you know, they like me, they're crazy about me. that behavior tends to get ignored a lot until it's very problematic, right? But at that point, it's a pattern and you find yourself stuck in a relationship, right? That's unhealthy.
I know there was a lot of 911 calls back and forth for the domestic situations between her and him. So there was definitely, from a long-term perspective, there was a buildup.
Jontay's loved ones became even more concerned when they discovered Minyetta's family had a history of violence.
Unfortunately, Minyetta was no stranger to this type of violence. Her sister years prior had murdered her ex-boyfriend and his current girlfriend.
I told my son, I said, Jontay, Minyetta is dangerous. Stay away. He was young. He said, okay, I know, Mom, I know. But he didn't.
In August 2017, 2 weeks before Jontay's murder, the family says he and Minyetta got into a heated argument.
Miss Yeager was very erratic and emotional at this time. Jontay's mother showed the police officers her ring camera. And it shows Mrs. Yeager standing outside her house, banging on the door, yelling for Jontay to come out. He refuses to come out. However, finally, he does come to the door.
They got into it. She bust out all my windows in my front of my house. And then she also bust out the window in my car.
But despite Minyetta's alleged violent outburst, Jontay refused to get police involved.
In a case where you have the male that's the victim, what we oftentimes see is that they don't go to authorities for numerous reasons. One is they're not believed. Those type of cases, unfortunately, aren't taken seriously. And also, it's that male stigma, right? You want to be tough, and to go to police or to go to friends or loved ones and say, hey, I'm being abused by this female, well, takes a little way away from your masculinity. So men feel a little ashamed. You rather walk away. And that's what Jontay was doing here.
Crazy. Crazy.
Instead, he finally decided to break up with her.
August 27th, that's the day he got killed. But that Friday before, I talked to him, and he was like, Mom, I see what everybody is saying. I gotta get away from this girl. I say, Jontay, I agree. He said, I got to get away.
When you're in a relationship that is hostile and volatile and unpredictable and unsafe, you do reach a breaking point, and you don't want to hear from that person anymore. You cut them off completely, and a lot of times that is not well received.
The night before he died, Jontay agreed to meet up with Minyetta one last time.
What we know is that on August 26th, Jontay is contacted by Miss Yeager, and she's insistent. She wants to meet with him. She wants to talk. He's trying to tell her, no, it's over. I'm moving on. There's nothing else, I need to talk about. And she wants to meet him at his aunt's house, which is not far from where she lives.
Minyetta was always bribing him with money and gifts. Even if he says no, she will still come around. If he don't react the way that she want him to react, she will sit in the driveway and just blow on the horn. Just lay on the horn. So this particular night, she did this. Jontay didn't want no problems, because this was my sister's house. And she was beating on the door at first. My sister came to the door and told her that Jontay is asleep. So she go back to the car and just lays on the horn at my sister's home. Jontay came outside and, he went with her.
Just a few hours later, Jontay was dead. And now, investigators can't find Minyetta anywhere.
They've been canvassing the neighborhood. They put a bolo out. At this point, they even go to the news media because they cannot find her anywhere.
This is on 11 o'clock news, 6 o'clock news, and ultimately someone does see and does give information. It's her, it's Miss Yeager herself.
Less than 24 hours after fatally shooting her ex-boyfriend, Jonte Brooks, Minyetta Yeager turns herself in to Detroit police.
She was transported to our holding facility, which is the Detroit Detention Center, and I went and interviewed her there. But I believe that she had an opportunity to speak with a lawyer before she turned herself in, so our interview was very short.
The story Minyetta tells police is quite different from the one they've heard so far. Minyetta claims she's the one who ended the relationship with Jonte, not the other way around.
She says she was abused by Jonte for months now. And at this point, she went to the mother's house because she finally had the courage to break up with him. She says that once she told him that she wanted to break up, he went crazy.
According to Minyetta, Jonte is the abuser in the relationship. And on this night, she says that he pulled her out of the van, beat her up, even beat her with a pistol at one point.
She finally was able to get away and run away from him. But no, he took the van and tried to run her over. At this point, LeBaron was there, and she saw him, and he offered to help.
Minyetta says she asked LeBaron to drive her to the gas station, intending to get her van back from Jonte. As she got out of LeBaron's truck, he handed her a gun to protect herself.
She says, in fact, that it was LeBaron who had the weapon and that she was simply there to just talk to Jonte. But she takes the weapon. She's in fear. She's in natural fear. She doesn't know what Jonte's gonna do. She says ultimately, out of self-defense, she shoots at Jonte. That she probably shot once or twice, 2 or 3 times at most. But then she tells police that her memory is foggy about the exact details.
Investigators are skeptical of her claims.
But it didn't make much sense because, you know, she says that she was abused and he was the abuser, but yet she's pursuing him. There's evidence that shows that she's appeared at his mother's house on a couple of occasions and, you know, threw a brick through the mother's windshield, tried to attack him when he opened the door to have a conversation. She says she shot 2 or 3 times at most, but we know from the physical evidence that there were 17 shell casings there at the gas station.
The police had a tough job in this situation because on one hand, we have Minyetta, who is reporting abuse, and then on the other hand, they also have contradicting reports where she was the abuser.
In a situation of domestic violence, you'll see signs of abuse. You'll see black eyes, you'll see broken noses, you'll see fat lips and cuts and scars and things of that nature. But in this situation, I don't remember any type of injuries to her. Now, there was a day or 2 that had passed, so could have something healed. I'm sure there's probably some doctors that could argue one way. There's some doctors that could probably argue the other. However, in this situation, I didn't see anything obvious.
I think that people in general expect a bad woman to act and look a certain way, that this person is going to be meek and timid and scared and crying. And in my experience, you don't know how you're going to act. People do act different ways, so we have to investigate.
Minyetta's statement also raises another question.
Ms. Yeager said LeBaron gave her a gun, but LeBaron said Ms. Yeager just brandished the gun. So where did the gun come from?
It's a very important detail because if LeBaron, in fact, did hand her this weapon, well, maybe this is not a first-degree murder case. Maybe this is a second-degree murder case or manslaughter.
When investigators re-interview LeBaron Borum, he says Minyetta is lying.
LeBaron says he doesn't own a gun, does not have one registered to him or anything. The police even search his home and do not find one.
But Minyetta doesn't appear to have the gun either.
In murder cases, oftentimes the defendant, especially when they've had time to flee the scene and head home, they'll discard the weapon, they'll throw it somewhere, they'll hide it someplace, they might pass it on to someone else. Police did search for the weapon but couldn't find it, which is not unusual. But they have enough evidence.
There's a misconception that you need a firearm to prove a homicide occurred or to charge somebody with homicide. That's not true.
The video evidence is pretty damning in and of itself.
On August 30th, 2017, Minetta Yeager is charged with first-degree murder. At her arraignment, she shows little remorse.
It was like around her birthday, and she told the judge, well, can we get this on because my birthday is coming up, so I want to get out of here. And the judge say, Miss Minetta, this is a homicide right here. You're not getting out that fast.
On September 6th, 2017, family and friends of Jonte Brooks gathered to pay their last respects.
He had a big funeral. We kept the casket open. I didn't want them to close it on him, And it was sad, but after the funeral we had the dove release. And the doves just didn't go nowhere. They're supposed to fly away, but they didn't go nowhere. And everybody was saying that's him, this dove. But he had a nice funeral.
Nearly a year later, in August 2018, his accused killer, Minetta Yeager, goes on trial.
Ms. Yeager's crux of her defense was that she was the one being abused. She was the only person who could testify to that, so she had to take the stand if that's what she wanted to do. And she wanted to do that, so she took the stand, and it didn't work out very well. Ms. Yeager indicated there were a couple people that tried to help her when he was assaulting her just previous to this homicide. That didn't bear out. These people, they were never found. There were no visible injuries.
Minetta is a liar. She was saying that he was beating on her. If he was beating on you, why all the time you're at my house? Why I have to always ask my son to keep you away? We couldn't keep you away.
Prosecutors focus on the night of the shooting, arguing the evidence clearly shows Minetta was the aggressor.
Video evidence was very specific to show that Miss Yeager went to that gas station with one intention, and one intention only, and that was to seek revenge to Mr. Brooks for taking her vehicle. She didn't get out of the car and flag him down and stop him and say, let's talk, reach her hand out for the exchange of keys. Wheels were still rolling, and she was already out of the neighbor's vehicle and firing at Mr. Brooks. In domestic violence situations and tumultuous relationships, it's not about love anymore. It's about property, what's mine. And I think people ultimately become property to each other as well. You belong to me.
In previous situations, Jonte had kind of acquiesced. This time he was staying true to what he wanted, and he drove off from her, and she did not know how to respond to that, and that led her into a rage.
After a 3-day trial, the jury finds Minetta Yeager guilty as charged.
We were able to have Ms. Yeager convicted of first-degree murder, and that is mandatory life in prison in the state of Michigan.
And the judge asked her, did she have anything to say to me or the family? She said no. She was looking directly at Dwayna and really smiling, which is evil, pure evil.
LeBaron Borum is also convicted of being an accessory after the fact. He serves less than 2 years in prison.
Whenever you get a guilty verdict on any case, but especially on a homicide, there's a sense of a job well done, that all of your hard work is paid off, and you're especially glad to get that justice for the family. But there's always going to be that sense of loss, and you can never make that family whole.
Everybody tells me that I have to forgive her. I would never forgive her. Never forgive her. This is my firstborn. She took him away from me, but I don't have anything to say to her. People say hate is a strong word. I want to go above hate. I hate her, and God understands my pain. I don't have to forgive her.
If anyone can learn anything from this, it's